Yeah, every year I've been teaching kids, and every year I get the same problem. I get these kids trying very hard to laser focus on a few subjects to get their grades. And they're just so tired and so locked in just maximizing their grades for a few subjects that take in A levels, 3 or 4 max. And it's like you'll hardly find anybody studying anything but the traditional physics, chemistry, math, biology, at least for anybody sitting in my class. And I'm thinking, is there nobody here who has any other interest? Only 1 in 300 will take art. 1 in 500 will take sociology. Maybe 1 in 20, or maybe 1 in 200 might take psychology. But that's it. That's the most they'll experiment. And because we never really allowed kids to try anything. Since I think in 5th, 6th grade, they just are told this is what you have to do. There's no other choice. And they locked in. It's like, okay, but the problem with that mindset is that if they're told to believe that if you do well in these things, you will succeed in life. So today I want to talk about I want to give the economic argument of why just keeping your head down and doing what you're told very well is not going to make you win. You're not going to win in this world with that. It's going to limit you. What you're doing is you're feeding into the argument that when you produce more and more of the same thing, the price goes down. So what we're doing is we're producing more and more of the same kind of graduates, and the business community loves it, because what they are doing is they have to pay less for the same widget maker. If the widget maker could be an engineer, doctor, whatever the widget makers are, they get lower cost widget makers. So we are all trying to compete for the cheapest price. Today you'll be doing it, tomorrow somebody else will be doing it cheaper than you. And that's the same thing happening with the world. And so what's happened over the last 50 years is that, yes, the wealth of the world has grown. Let's take the first world nations. Their wealth, the total net wealth of those nations has grown at a much greater rate as the median salary, which that means is people are making more money, businesses are making more money, but the people are not making the same amount of money, or the rate at which they're increasing is not the same rate as that. And why is that? Because we've been told these are the subjects we want, you just become good at these and we'll hire you. Now what happens is you get cheaper engineers, you get better but cheaper engineers, or doctors, or whatever, artists even, that's for you mean. And it just becomes a rat race, a race to the bottom. And that's what it's become. And we will eventually give away the bottom also. So the point is that how does one stay relevant? This is, by the way, none of this is still including the way in which the technology is changing at a faster rate and jobs are becoming obsolete. We got to talk about that bit also. But just the fact that I have 200 kids in a class every year, and a year I teach in multiple batches, so through I might say 400. And I cannot tell one apart from the next. They all want the same thing. They all want to be doctors. And then, I could hire X, Y, and Z. They will just be names on a plate and numbers. And that is so, and the problem is that these kids don't see it, they're all the same. Just by doing one extra mark better, even with the topmost grades, if in my class, I get kids with 5 A's or 4 A's in A levels. There'll be 500 of them. There going to be openings for 500 kids. Where do they go? So what kids don't realize is that boxing them in themselves into just a few things is not going to be the answer. Not even the economic answer. Forget finding their soul in themselves and what they're good at. That's separate. And that's something that they need to do also. Because what the world wants is people who can do something really, really well. And you can only do something really, really well if you're willing to put hours at midnight? Like 9 o'clock in the night to do this. 10 o'clock in the night on your own volition, not by me pushed by, because there's a job, I gotta do this. You'll work 7 days a week for that. It won't feel like a job. So that's a different argument. But just the idea that you cannot be single dimensional anymore. Because even for the fact that if you're single dimensional, you become less competitive in the job market. You also then restrict yourself from changing careers if you need to later on in life. So there's a lot of issues with just kids not realizing that, we need to learn more things right now. Now, the one way to solve that, like I just mentioned, was that if students should definitely, by default, think of dual majors, dual careers, dual degrees, whatever they can. If they are good at something or they want to be good at something that the world pays the money for, that's great. But they should also simultaneously choose one thing they really love to do and find a career in that also. I'm not saying do the career, but keep learning that craft to that level. So when you finally graduate and go into the real world, multiple things will happen. You will be at least better than everybody else who just did one major. Second, you'll be able to connect the dots. At least bi-disciplinary might not be multidisciplinary, but it'll still be two disciplines versus one. I mean, for example, you could be a computer scientist and also be a musician. But learn the musician's craft to a level that you're not just singing songs at a little party, but you are actually understanding the science behind the music. So learn two crafts that excite you, and then you can connect the dots at multiple stages in life. Yes, if you figure out 3 or 4 such areas, the more the merrier. But not everybody has the bandwidth to do that much. But you got to definitely spread out. So when you spread out, when you do at least 2 majors or 2 degrees or one regular degree and one the same amount of studying but done on your own pace and your own style, you still become craft. You still hone your craft in 2 areas. So that makes you a better employee. It also gets you to not be so tied into one career, because suddenly if you tie your identity to one degree and that career goes away or that jobs go away or that industry vanishes, you're not left feeling empty, like what was the purpose of my life. Like, for example, I'm a teacher and I'm XYZ. Tomorrow we don't even need any more teachers. But if I was only a teacher, I would start looking for the fact that, okay, what do I do now? This is what's happening in the truckers industry in America, auto mechanics and engineers in many parts of the world. Engineers' jobs are being replaced by robots. So that's another thing. You got to find something else that gives you a second chance at life, because we've seen in our lives careers change for people at least 3 times in a career. Our kids will see it at least happen 4 or 5 times, because life will change that fast. So you need for that also. So there are multiple arguments for why you should study more than one thing.
I really like what you said about the second thing that you learn, you should learn in your own way, for example. Because, for example, I want to be an engineer, and that I do through the traditional, conservative, laid out for me method that the world has decided. But then I also, on the side, I'm so passionate or encouraged at home about something that I love. I find a way to learn that thing. That finding a way to learn something will give me the kind of confidence that will help me later in life when I'm standing at a point and there is something in front of me that I don't know, but I will remember that I taught myself thing B, and hence now I can pick up the next, many things that come my way, as opposed to being afraid and saying, oh no, I don't know this. It will be more like, oh no, I don't know this, but why don't I do what I did with the thing, because I really want to do this. So it will give you that confidence of being a learner.
Absolutely. It's exactly what ties into becoming a lifelong learner. If you've taken if you do 2 majors, let's say, one is traditional through the regular university that your parents want you at least to have that degree program. Let's say you study being a sound engineer on your own. You can learn. You have to teach yourself how to learn. You have to figure out how to learn yourself, test yourself, so that you're not learning for an exam, you're learning for a skill. By doing that, you've become what we call a lifelong learner. You've trained yourself to become that. So you're saying exactly. So you've given yourself a third thing, not just 2 careers, but a third thing, the ability to learn things on your own, which is what we want. We say these buzzwords that we want our kids to be lifelong learners. But are we training them to be lifelong learners? We just say, here, this is the exam, this is how you get an A. Do 35 years of exams, past papers, you'll get the A. That's not being a lifelong learner. You're not telling our kids, we're not showing them the tools to learn themselves. But if they fall, we have to coach them. We can't just say, here's the tool. We got to sit with them and tell them, scaffold their learning, to explain to them how to do it. If you can do that for a little bit, and for some, you might not even need to do that. They'll learn on their own. So that is in fact, I mean, that's you could say the bonus in that, if you could learn to. But if you don't even have that, if you're lucky to go to America to go to college, you can still do a double major in the same 4 years of program that you're doing that. So then you should learn something else, the third thing on the side. Because the more you learn, the more multidisciplinary your life becomes, not just study, but your life. And then you connect the dots later on in life. And you might not connect all the dots, but at least give yourself enough dots to play with. If you only have one line, it can only go one way. It can only end. It can't turn or curve. And that's the biggest problem that people are not realizing right now. The idea of agility adaptability, how quick you are to change things. So when you don't have one career tied to your life, then you know that you can give things up right away. The problem with having only one career is that sometimes you give it up too late, and it's too late. Sometimes you have to know when to quit and move to the next thing. So if you have only one career, it'll be in your self-interest to drag that career on as long as possible till everybody kicks you out. So it's always good to have a second hand with you.
And what's the case for expertise versus mediocrity? A lot of people would, argue that if you try to do more than one thing, you will never really be very good at, that one thing. And so if you want to be a doctor, you should be focusing all your energies on that thing, and that's medicine, and that's everything around it. And if you have a second thing, it can be a hobby. The word culturally used is hobby, right?
Yeah.
So you have a hobby on the side, and it's your side thing, and it's your side gig, but that can't be what you focus your time and energy on. How do you build a case for that? Do you feel that maybe in the future expertise is something that's going to be redefined by the fact that many people will have multi-dimensional learning and multi-careers maybe?
So I think people will definitely have to go through multiple careers in life, but there's a few areas that I want to touch upon. One is that some people are driven by deep work. And so you have to know, it's about knowing yourself. If you are somebody who only thrives in deep work, when they can only really perform, but when they're given one thing and they give it their all and nothing else matters, then they should only do deep work. But it is incorrect to think that you cannot do deep work in two things. Like what people when I hear the argument that you really can only give your 100% to something and not two things. What they're trying to say is that they've actually all their life they're only breathing, sleeping, drinking only one thing, which is not the case. Most kids are spending not more than 5 hours a day doing their dream career. It's wasted with friends and with. Now, I'm not saying friends are a waste of time, but a lot of the time is just pointless spending time. You want to spend time with your friend? Do a physical activity together that helps you grow, or do any other project or any other learning with them. So you can use that downtime to be better at another thing also. You probably know so many doctors who are great musicians. I don't know why is that, but doctors, because I think that they're doctors because everybody else in the world wanted them to be, or maybe they themselves too. But they still find the time to at least be good musicians in some areas. We know so many popular musicians who are doctors. So people can. I think it's a myth that you cannot deep work in more than one area. You can have more than one interest. Even our hobbies take up a lot of our time if you quote the word hobby. Let's say you're a movie buff. I know so many people who know the history and the breadth and the depth of the movie industry in America. That takes time, right? So is learning a craft. So they did spend time learning two crafts, but they just could have been a movie critic in a newspaper. But my point is that you have to spend time. Also, not everybody needs to be a deep learner. If you are one that is better at connecting, because you learn very fast, very early on, that are you good at connecting many things together? And if you're that person, then you rather be maybe a master of, or a 80% or a 70% master of one, and do a jack of all kind of thing. So that you are the person in a team whose job is to just connect everybody together. And there are people in a team like that, whose job is to understand everybody's part of work and put it together. CEOs are great examples of that. Managers themselves don't have to be good at one thing. They have to be able to use the information they get. Presidents of countries don't have to be, like you might have to be an expert to be the Minister of Defense. But you have to be a holistic individual to be a president. So, and everybody is wired differently. And it is all about knowing yourself. I think people need to start really trying to find out about themselves. They don't do that enough.
So what age does that start?
The earlier the best. Knowing yourself, the earlier the best. Because I don't think enough people are, I think understanding your own self and human psychology should be, at least a bit of it should be taught to every individual at a very early age onwards. There are some great intro-level courses on human psychology in university. Sadly, only a few people take it. If you were to understand how you even think and behave, you can, what we say, the word hack yourself, or you can game yourself. But it's more that you can understand yourself to apply it better. So I think that people start realizing that psychology is more and more of a science now. And the earlier we teach the science to kids to apply to themselves, the better we'll be, the better they'll be. Not everybody needs to understand quantum mechanics or, organic chemistry. Really, they don't. But we teach them that. But we don't teach them to understand why you behave a certain way, what triggers us, all that. We've never taught that.
I love how it goes back to things like, Iqbal's Khudi or Rumi saying that the answers are within yourself for all of these things. And the fact that, so what about Pakistan? What do you feel Pakistan, the culture we have? Kids grow up, there are certain kids who have certain personalities, and, the families will label them for it, and they'll say, okay, this bacha is a geek, or, he's into technical stuff, he likes wiring and he likes this. And so, this one is an artist, this one loves dancing. They will see these traits, but they're kind of disregarded, you must have
Yes.
seen many people who then, when the stage comes for a child to actually be that economical, asset of sorts, then that is always disregarded, right? Often disregarded. And then what happens is that things are imposed upon the child, and then begins that journey that when you're talking about, in which there's like 200 kids sitting and they're all the same, trying to compete by that one mark, right? So what do you say in Pakistan? Like, what do you say is happening that can change besides the fact that they can be schooled differently?
I think when parents recognize the fact that their child has an additional talent or ability or interest, what most parents do is that they quash that interest, so that they're in their mind the idea is that, well, he's got to get grades to get into the best university. And in their mind, the only way to get grades is to give it the most amount of time. We equate the time given to learning one thing as the measure of how good you'll be, or how you'll become, or a predictor of how good you'll be. What they don't realize is that it's more than just time. It's the inner desire to do something also. So if a kid, if there's some kids, when parents push them so hard and move them away from the things that interest them, their fire dies. Like, I have kids in my class who are not interested in this, in the regular path they're given. They were not born that way. I'm sure when they were 2 years old, the parents didn't say, what a boring kid we have. He just sits there, does nothing. Every kid makes noise. Every kid wants to be heard and expressed. What happens? We just hammer it out of them. So if my advice to parents would be, if you see something that child has an innate, because there are some innate likings we have for things. If you find that, hone that in addition to this. Use that as a carrot, if you will. But use that as a muse or something that ignites the passion. So tell them, do this and do that also. Why can't people do more than one thing? Parents need to realize that kids can do more than one thing. I'm not saying multitask. I'm saying you can have more than one thing in your life. Aren't parents more than one thing? Aren't they more than a husband and some XYZ worker and some friend and this and a son? These are roles that we take up. Same with learning things also. Why can't we have more than one thing learned? So, and everything adds on. So the biggest problem I have with parents who dissuade their children from doing other things is because they think that, you know what, it'll save time and he can focus on the things that matter. The problem is, you can put me in a room with a book of medicine and I might never be focused. I might not like it. I can just sit there and show you I'm reading. I'm reading, but the words are not coming in. I'm zoned out. But we just use as because if you're really interested in something and you know the language, you will learn it. We just have to have parents believing that it's in their advantage where the kid learns multiple things. It is. There's never a disadvantage of not learning anything. So as far as when you said the Pakistan market and the people and all of that, I think the biggest problem is the parents and their mindset first. Or I'm not saying all parents are like that, but the vast majority of parents have seen is that we do this till exams come. The exams are the end all of everything. And we should realize by this pandemic that you can have life without exams. It's okay. So, and when people say that, I'll give you an example from my 7-year-old. She can solve her homework, scan it, upload it to the right group in an LMS. And she's 7 years old. She can use an LMS. She can do more with the iPad than my wife and my mother can. Isn't that learning also? Tools that one needs to use, right? Just like the camera we're recording this on. It's a tool that if somebody knows how to use artistically can do wonders, right? So my point being that we need to Not let kids not learn these things. It doesn't have to just be what the test result was, what the exam result was. And I think schools have a big part to play this too. They have to bring such skills to the same importance and to elevate them to the same level as exam-based subjects. Until they do that, because if we're fighting at the parents' level, at least the schools can fight for the child. That no, everything is important. We say this is important, but come February, March, we say all activities are over. We have to only focus on exams. Why? It's not like we stop eating or we stop hanging out with friends. We need all of that. So, but anyway, that's that. But there's an economic argument that I was telling kids also. There's that, understand that the more you put inside yourself, the more you know about yourself. So when you learn multiple things, you're also trying to learn about yourself. And you're trying to arm yourself with different skills, because whatever you learn, whatever you do, whatever you love to do, eventually you will get bored of it. What you will not ever get bored of is the delight you'll feel when you've helped others or when your work is recognized by others. So just be good at something. And being good at multiple things just keeps you safer in the real world whenever you might need something. You have to be adaptable. You go to a different country and then what you don't know doesn't work. So you have, and now you can't, like, there was an excuse when I was a student. Look, I can't do multiple majors in Pakistan. It's not allowed, for example. Or in even 10 years ago when I was teaching my kids. But now everybody can learn a second skill. Coursera, edX, Udacity, you name it, they're on it. And then not just that, you can teach yourself. Books, every book is now available to download. Mostly now pirated free versions, but they're there, right? So time, you gotta spend time and the commitment of attention.
So one of the things that students complain about is that they don't have time to do things, right? So do you think that schools are doing something wrong by the way they're teaching the kids, in the sense that they seem to be taking up the whole day doing something which is pretty standard, right, all over the world. They're preparing for O-levels and A-levels, and somehow that kid is going to school and then going for tuitions, and then his entire day is used up. So is that something that schools could do differently, or students could do differently, or see differently?
I think the whole way we learn, the whole way students are learning and we are teaching them is extremely inefficient. It might have worked when we had no other choice but to get the master trainer in one room with 50 other kids at the same exact time. So you all get them in lecture hall, they deliver information, they capture it, that's it. That was the only way to do that. It was the only cheap way to do that. Now you can do, if I am, at least for majority of the content we teach kids, the content-based lectures, I can speak this for about subjects like physics, chemistry, bio, math, accounting, maybe even economics. A lot of it can just be delivered anywhere, anytime. That's the one problem. You don't have to go to school. The amount of time we waste in commute, the amount of time we waste in just settling in, starting, then the amount of time, the inefficiency of expecting all 50 students in a class to be equally engaged with content. We expect that. How is that? Isn't that just asking for trouble? We at our own dinner table, when we meet friends of 20, we can all be listening to the same conversation. When we are actually having fun. So how do you expect kids sitting in one lecture where half of them are tired, sleepy, not eaten? Even if you had all of that stuff, you would still be bored and you might look outside and there. And what schools do, they close the windows. They have no windows in a classroom because kids will look outside. That's not how you get kids entertained or engaged. Come on. So, and then this whole idea of, okay, you go to school, this is A-levels. We'll teach you one subject for 45 minutes and then you come the next day. And then this thinking, this idea that kids can only pay attention for 1 hour and the attention dissipates. Now, you and I have worked for long hours in our lives. Like how many times have we worked on something that has taken us a good 4 hours? We've lost 4 hours of our life and not realizing it. So human beings are capable of doing long, deep work. We just miss that. Why can't kids study for more than 1 hour at one time? If they're really engaged, they want a break, they can take a 2-minute break. But who says to just switch off? Because switching off and starting the next thing is also hey, I've got to save this somewhere. I don't forget. That switchover takes time. It's inefficient. There's inefficiency built in the system all throughout. Like, I can tell you this, and I'm going to be crucified for saying this, but I teach A-level chemistry. It's over 2 years. I was doing the math earlier. Like somebody else was asking me this today. You could literally study each year of chemistry, AS and A2, maximum in 100 hours. 150 hours tops in a year. So if you think about it, 150 hours in a year, you say, I want to spend 8-hour days studying this. 8 hours a day chemistry. Do that math. That's 20 days. That's it. So you in 20 days, you get 160 hours. So if a kid studies 60 days, 8 hours a day, 3 different subjects, he's done with the whole syllabus. So you're telling me in a year of 360 days, he's done A-levels in 60 days. That's efficiency. He's got 300 days left to learn anything else. What do we do with that time? All we're doing is wasting him from going from one campus to the next, from home to school, from room to room, then free period. You engage, you disengage, you engage. It is not made for the learner. The user experience of the learner is thrown out the freaking window. A kid might say, you know what, this week I'm so, like, forget. Like, you could do weeks. Week A could be chemistry, and you could actually finish like 6 hours even a day. 8 hours is, let's say, we do work 6 hours a day. And 6 hours a day for about 5 days a week. 30 hours of learning is done. 1/5 of your curriculum is done in 1 week for each subject. How is that not doable right now? And you get so much time to do everything else. You can take a 6-month project. You can start a business in 8 months, man. So, and it's broke. The system is broke. We don't know how. And the problem is that nobody in the system wants to fix it because our livelihoods are tied to the whole system. If you say we can do it in 60 days, the teacher will say, who's going to pay us the salary for the whole year? No, we have to drag it out for a whole year. That's it. So and schools can't charge. So like that's another problem. But if the schools realize, look, let's do this in 60 days and do so much more, then kids can learn so much more. And yes, if they're disengaged in 1 month, that's okay. They have so many months to catch up on other things. So that becomes like, and even the rigor for these subjects is irrelevant now. The amount of rigor we ask for each subject, why? It's not like most kids are ever going to use that science. Or I'm just using science as an example, but so there is a lot out there.